Recording, and let me make sure that's going. Okay, so hello everybody and greetings. Priscilla, it's wonderful to have you here tonight. Thank you for joining with me. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you.
Wonderful. So I want to start off by asking you, how old do you say you are?
93. I turned 93 on the 14th of November,
Oh, that is awesome. And so that means you were born in what year?
1927.
27. That's a blessing to make it to 93. I hope I can get to be that age. Um, so you were born where? Were you born here in Georgia?
In Toledo, Ohio.
Oh, in Toledo, Ohio.
hmm
And who were your parents?
James Delling Turner and Mattie Mae Peak. She was her maiden name was Peak.
James Delling, that's James D. Turner, James Delling,
Uh-huh.
Delling, and Mattie
Y-
Maype. Do you remember
Yes,
Mattie?
uh-huh.
I'm sorry. Do you remember
Go ahead.
Mattie Mae Peak's people?
Her mother's name was Stewart, Mattie Stewart.
Okay. And she was from Taliaferro County also?
Yes.
Okay.
When you say Tolliver, that kind of throws me. Yeah, Taliaferro.
Yeah, they it's spelled Taliaferro like Taliaferro, but
Mm-hmm.
it is actually pronounced Tolliver.
That's
So
interesting.
it throws everybody. So what most people, I noticed on the census, during the Freedmen Bank records, I noticed they put Tolliver. So it has always been called Tolliver. It does throw people off all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
she was born. So she met your father here.
Yes, uh-huh. She met Daddy in Crawfordsville.
Oh, awesome. You think they went to school here together?
No, at the time they met, Crawfordsville was still was Springfield, and he was in Springfield or Robinson, Georgia. I think the post office was Robinson, Georgia.
That's correct. The post office was Robertson for a long time. And then once the mail post office moved to Crawfordville, it split us up. We stay in Union Point now, although we didn't move. And everybody else get their mail from Crawfordville. So the
Oh,
Springfield area, yeah, the Springfield area is now part of Union Point because that's the post office they assigned us to. And the people who live on Highway 22 to get their mail from Crawfordville. So it's a different zip code. That throws people off too. Many times I've had people try to write me a letter and they'll put Crawfordville, Georgia, and it'll go to Crawfordville and then she can't do anything with it. And so she'll either send it back or send it to Union Point and then they'll send it to me. So that it is very confusing the way the split works. But the post office in Robertson moved is what happened. So you remember your grandparents at all?
oh, of course, uh-huh. Yes, my parents, my daddy and his siblings were very proud of their parents. They kept us all up to date, but I guess I'm the only one that wrote it down.
So you kept a
You want to
record of
you want to know their names?
so you kept a record of your family.
Yes, but nothing like you have.
Oh no, I think you did. But yours is handwritten though, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So it's awesome. That is very awesome that you wrote down all those names. So yes, who are your siblings?
my siblings was Shepherd James Turner. That's Shepherd, and Clarence Delling Turner, Harold Turner, and he passed when he was 16 months old.
Oh, I always hate it when babies die so early.
Uh-huh. He
Go
had a
ahead
little
on.
cousin. He had a little cousin that died also at that same time.
Mm.
my daddy's brother.
And how many was in your family?
My parents, the two parents, and the four children.
Awesome. Awesome. And now your maternal grandparents that's the Peaks?
Yes, That's Shepherd Peak and Mattie Stewart Peak.
Okay. Shepherd Peak. Now that's two. Shepherd Peak always throws me off because in the marriage book, there is a Shep Peak, Shep, and a Shepherd Peak. And I remember reading somewhere that the mayor of Atlanta grandfather is Shepherd Peak. And so they always throws me off as to which one they're talking about. Were they talking about the one they call Shep or the one they call Shepherd? Because both names were the same, actually.
They were both the same, actually.
And so you are related to the mayor of Atlanta.
Yes, my mother and her grandmother are second cousins.
Oh, awesome. That is so
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all know each other before? Have you ever
Yes,
met?
yes, I knew I knew her when she was a little girl, but going to the Peak reunion, I knew her grandmother well. She's a very, very fine person. Kept the laughter going, and she was a very personable person. Very personal. I'm not kidding. She really was.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And your paternal parents, those are the Turners. Those are my people on that side.
Yes.
One half of my people. And so you remember I remember Cunliffe. But I don't remember Ed and Essida. Those two, my aunts speak about them all the time.
All right. Well, Essida was Lust. See, I only knew him as Lust until I started putting the graphs together that he was Celestus rather than Lust. Because you know how they speak in the olden times. Are we okay?
Yeah, we fine. Go ahead on.
Okay, because I didn't know my grandfather Ed Turner was Eddie until I started putting the graph together because he was Ed Turner, and his grandfather was Jacob, and they never said Mariah Stewart. They would say Ridey Stewart.
Yeah, we had lots of nicknames.
They briefed the names, and on his father's side, on my dad's father's side, Sam Turner married Mary Hannah Battle, but they call her May Hannah.
It is funny. That is funny. I remember doing my research when I found the Freedman Bank records for Spencer Turner. And he named all of his children. He gave all their proper names, the name he gave them at birth. So they were Sarah and Jacob, Jack, Melinda, Margaret, Henry. And then his son Henry gave his siblings' name because Henry also had an account. And he gave the name of his siblings. He gave every last one of their nicknames. So he said Jake, Jack, Lindy. So it's amazing how the two different. So if you didn't know any better, you would want to think these was two different families.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that
was the confusion we have with Princella and Priscilla too. People that are not familiar with the South will call my two aunts Priscilla, but their names are Prince Ella. It seems that my grandmother Essida, she named all of her girls except one with ending in Ella.
The twins, you're talking about the twins, Ludella and Princella.
Ludella and Princella. And there's Isabella, and Victoria is the only girl that wasn't named Ella.
Yeah, I knew the twins. Douglas used to come to our house all the time. Douglas Edward, Ludella's son.
Yes.
He would come here every time he came home. He would always come here. He played like a kid. He was always very energetic. So yes, I definitely know Ludella, and she didn't live far from me. And so we would actually go down and visit sometime. So I remember them. Now tell me something. Because Ed and Esada is your grandparents, right? Got
Yes.
and
That's Ludella's parents.
those are her parents, and those are
Mhm.
your father's parents.
Right.
Yeah. So you what did I want to ask you about them? Because they grew up here, and I seem to me they went to school here. Ed himself was actually one of the board members for the log cabin school down here.
Oh.
And he helped in this building, and he was very instrumental. He and Stellustus. So Stellustus would have been his father or his brother. That would have been
His brother-in-law. That's his brother-in-law.
that's his brother-in-law. So yeah, they worked together as board members, as trustees for the log cabin school. Did they ever tell you anything about that?
I just knew that. No, I didn't know anything about that until I met you about the school.
Wonderful. So tell me what you remember about them, your grandparents and your great-grandparents too. I remember Conlus. Let me tell you this, because Conlus, when I was coming up, was a big man, and he spoke with authority. And so he could scare you sometimes, but he was always businesslike, always businesslike. He was a deacon at the church. I remember that growing up as a kid. Conlus was always somebody you didn't play with. Was he that way as a granddad? I guess not, probably.
I don't know. I know my grandmother, Asida, she was a quiet lady. She was efficient. And see, she was a Turner, and she married a Turner.
So
her name was Asida Turner because she's Jacob Turner's daughter, and she married Ed Turner, Eddie Turner, I guess his name was on the paperwork you have. But his folks, his dad was Sam Turner, and his mother was
Mary Hannah.
Mary Hannah Battles.
Yeah. Now she has two different names on the census. So one is Mary Hannah Williams, and then because I didn't find her marriage license, but everyone didn't legally marry. Some people jumped the broom, is what I read in the church article about Reverend Derry Murden. So they was they some of them jumped the brooms, and some of them, even after they jumped the broom, once it became legal for them to be married, some of them went to the courthouse and became married. But I may have found her marriage license. Seemed to me I was at a reunion some years ago. And this reunion, the family was trying to see if they were related to us because, like you say, Esada Turner married a Turner. And so they was trying to see if there was any relations, but I couldn't find where there was some or where there wasn't. There was nothing that connected the two. But I did try my best to find as much information as I could on Mary Hannah, because they didn't know her first name was Mary. Everybody here called her Hannah. She was a wonderful person.
They didn't call her May Hannah?
No, everybody, not here, not where I live. She was Hannah Turner. She was Hannah Turner because she was a midwife. And so on a lot of the birth certificates, her name are on there, and she signs it Hannah Turner. So on my mother's birth certificate, she's Hannah Turner. So she was very apparently she was one of the first, and then there was another lady, Miss Sadie, who was also a midwife, and then they had a midwife in town, Crawfordville, and so they birthed pretty much all of the kids in the neighborhood. They were there. So my grandmother Ophelia had 10 children, and out of those 10, I think she told me that 7 was born at home. So it was a common practice.
Only her younger ones were probably in the hospital.
That's correct. So Miss Hannah
Mm.
was very busy at being a midwife.
Well, she was busy, huh?
Yeah, she was very busy. If you look at the birth certificates for most of our family, Hannah Turner name is on there.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
see, that's news to me too, because Aunt Vicky never said, she never mentioned that. She possibly didn't know it.
Yeah. So
Victoria
I
was
would. I,
Victoria was
oh,
Ed's and Ed's first daughter.
okay.
That's the one they say I'm like.
Awesome. So I didn't meet Victoria Sawyer was her last name. She a married name, right? If we talk,
She was, yes, her last, she was married to Zeddy Barrow, and then she was married to Sawyer.
yes, I remember seeing her obituary, but I didn't know her either. I do have a copy of her obituary, though.
Do you?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
My grandmother Ophelia collected. She tried to go to every family funeral. My grandmother loved her family. She talked about her family often.
That's what I know about the Turners. They talked about their families. That's why I know who is who, and can spell them. And we had to write letters to our grandparents and my uncles and aunts on their birthdays and Christmas and things like that. That's how we learned how to write. They were
Well,
very proud of their families.
that was an awesome thing to have y'all to do. Sure
Uh-huh,
was.
I think so too.
Yeah, it
I think,
was. So yeah, but they do. They talk about my grandmother would visit her people. They always, when they came home, they would stop by here. So yeah, she loved her family. Now she didn't always tell us who separate the names of who belonged to who, but she loved her family. And so she collected all of the obituaries. And after she died in 2003, I want to say, I went over to my aunts and I was like, can I have those obituaries? And I brought them home and I bought this 1,000 page book. And Miss Gloria and I, that's George Turner wife, we started putting them in the book. So we put
how
all
nice.
yeah, so we want to save all of some of those people I know, a lot of them I do not know. But yeah, so that's how I have Victoria Sawyers, and I have quite a few of them. Actually, I have Jasper Turner. I have quite a few of those. So I try to attach them to the family history when I'm doing the work.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. But
Uh-huh.
I remember when I first met you, you had that tablet. I want to say and it was all handwriting. I was so impressed that somebody loved their family so much that they would write their family tree in hand, not type it like me. Plus, you look so young too. So you had it all written by hand of the family tree. I thought that was so awesome.
Really?
Yes.
You
How
make
long
me
it took?
feel real. You make me feel really good. I thought it. I thought it was futile because after I finished, had gone as I could go, and I made copies and sent them to all my first cousins, and I asked that if they had any more information, to please let me know. No one said anything, and so I thought, well, I'll just let it alone. No, nobody's interested but me. And then my grandson, uh, who lives in Atlanta, Hampton, Georgia. He's a Van Duval because his mother met his dad out in Colorado. He's interested, so he has a copy. And then my grandson that's in Arizona, he has a room where he has a wall with the copy on his wall. And his daddy, he's made up on his father's side, the Hamiltons, and he's very proud of his family. And I'm glad of that. I'm glad of that.
That is wonderful. But yes, I was really impressed with that somebody loved their family enough to keep up the history. Because it is difficult, like you say, for people to get interested. I think there are a lot of people that want to know their history. They just don't want to do the actual work, the researching and the going to the courthouse and finding documentations. And so,
My nephew in Toledo, one of my nephews, my brother James, his son Mark, when he heard Miss Peak on the phone, on TV, saying something about Crawfordsville, and the Peaks. Oh, he had a fit, and now he's accumulating whatever he can accumulate on his father and mother's side too.
Isn't that awesome?
Mark was very impressed when he found out she was our relative.
Yeah, it takes something to inspire some people to get them started. I think it's awesome, whatever it takes to inspire them. I just hope they keep it up and that they don't get tired and quit. Because, you run into those brick walls where you can't go any further with the tree. And that's discouraging. And you want to know. And I know people doing DNA. I get people all the time when they get their DNA and they'll write me or email me and they'll say, oh, I have my DNA and it says you're my cousin, but I don't know how we related. And I reply back, I don't know either. I can't look at your DNA.
The Turners and the Stewarts, they crisscross back and forth so much. Like you mentioned not too long ago, it's a small area, so people intermarry because I just know that if they're Turners or Peaks or Stewarts or Chapmans or Atkinsons, they're related to me. I know that. And also now I know Battle because Mary Hannah was a Battle. And see the battles and the Peaks are intermarried.
Yeah, well, you see, you had the problem. I guess I shouldn't say problem. You had Umstead Atkinson, who was a slave owner, who owned the 1,500 acres here.
Right.
His daughter married into the Battle family, and so some of the slaves went to her, and then some of the slaves went to Dickerson. His other daughter married into the Dickerson family.
That's the first time I've heard that name.
Yeah, so his son, the only son he had, died as an infant, as a small child. So Dickerson was a doctor. He also had something to do with Alexander H. Stephen School. I guess he was like a board of directors trustee or something. And as far as I can tell, I don't think their children stayed here. So the slaves were split, but his wife, Umstead Atkinson, is going to die in 1831, I want to say. And when he died, out of the Turners, so Spencer, the mother Priscilla, and her kids stayed with his wife. His wife's name was Sarah Atkinson. They stayed with his wife. And so as time goes on, she actually dies here, but I think her kids buried her in North Carolina. So but we remained here. The difference was Priscilla's son Henry kept the last name Atkinson, and then Spencer took the name Turner, and then one of the other boys took the last name Jenkins, and then the girls, Sarah married a Roberts, and so the Harriet became a Jones. So the girls all the boys took different names. So it's not that we were this or that. These are the names that some of us changed our names to. They weren't, so Battle was her slave name. I don't think Hannah kept it. So a lot of us changed from that slave plantation name. Most of my research says that only 5% of slaves kept their slave name. They changed that surname. They didn't want to keep that surname. So that's how we became Turners. So a lot of times when you see the Turner, Stewart, all that interaction, it's because they changed names. That wasn't, and we've been trying to guess why did they take the name Turner. Some folks say maybe they heard about Nat Turner, but I'm inclined to believe that they got it from Reverend Henry McNeil Turner, who was a free slave who came through preaching about we should go back to Africa. He was a very influential pastor. He went from all over the state of Georgia. His picture's actually in Macon at the City Hall. I think it's the mayor's office. And he may actually be in City Hall in Atlanta. But his name was Reverend Henry McNair Turner. And I'm thinking more realistically, that's probably who we changed our Turner name to be with. But of course, we're not related to him as far as I can tell. It's just we wanted to change our names and we changed it to Turner. And I don't know why Jenkins changed his to Jenkins, other than that was a nickname people called him. And so he changed his to Jenkins. So it's interesting the history is really interesting because we are so wrapped up in names. I think as Black people, we want to belong. And so we don't really know.
All people want to belong, you know?
Yeah, yes, you're right. But we because we don't know our heritage, we don't know our African names, we really cling to names so very much. And we want to have that connection. That connection was lost for us during slavery. We don't have that identity. And I think
because so many of our people are in the ocean, you know?
Oh, yes, that's true.
They were throwing off those ships when they were about to be captured. They just throw the slaves into the ocean.
That's true.
So that link has been broken, and we don't have anything to say unless they take take the DNA and can connect us.
Yes, and even when they connect us to the DNA, it don't tell us what name. Like I know a cousin of ours, she took the the DNA to oh gosh, not the mitochondria DNA, that's your mother. She took the one for the male and she found out what tribe she came from. But even knowing what tribe you came from don't tell you who your family was. It don't tell you your family last name. And so I tell people when I try to teach them this class on the Black history research, don't get stuck on the last name. Don't get stuck on the surname, because the further back you go doing your research, you will find the names are going to change over and over. On the 1870 census, for instance, we were known as Atkins, Adkins, because it seemed like grandfather was trying to figure out whether we should keep this name or not keep this name. There had to be somewhat of a struggle with them, because his brother kept the name Atkinson. And his family is feeling like, well, maybe we should, but maybe we shouldn't. And then later on the 1874 Freedman Bank records, is the first time you see the word Turner. Is when he decided to go Turner. And I wish he had a road.
So they spelled the name A-D and rather than A-T, huh?
No, that's a census worker. We couldn't read or write. So the census worker spelled it that way because that's what she felt like spelling it as. But no, they didn't do any of that, because the slave, my grandfather Spencer Turner, couldn't read or write. On everything, there's an X for his signature.
Yes.
Right. So the census worker spelled the names the way they wanted to. But my point that I'm making is that he was not saying Atkinson. You can tell that he's like debating whether to keep Atkinson or whether to change. So it's not Atkinson. And then 1874 Freedman Bank record, he has Spencer Turner. So it's like, okay, that's when they made their decision. They were going to be Turners, and then we remained Turners. So we don't know what our surname really was. We don't know what our African name is. We know that he took the name Turner. His brother Henry kept the name Atkinson. His brother James took the name Jenkins. That's as far as my research goes. Yeah.
Yes, I realize that we don't know our African name. But you know, if you were teaching a class, I would give it everything to be. I would be there every time you had a class. You sound so interesting.
Well, once a year, the church has a Discovery Day, and they only did it once a year, normally in February, because that's Black History Month, and we do everybody's invited. It's free, and I teach the discovery class, and I've had people from everywhere come and listen to the class. Some people are beginners; they're trying to figure it out. Some people have been doing it a long time, just trying to know some They're hitting brick walls, hoping I can help them. It is a very fulfilling class. Now, this year, the lady in charge switched it to March, which was bad thing to do because coronavirus came in March and the class was canceled. So
Yes.
I haven't taught the class since then because I don't know I don't know how to market me teaching the class, if people would be interested in taking the class or not. But I do love talking to people about Black history and how to do our research, and just don't give up and don't get stuck on the last names. Don't get stuck on those names because it makes it so hard to find your family when you get stuck on those names. Because it's we didn't know how to read and write, so you don't know how it's going to be spelled. You was talking about the Mayhanna, because there is one where somebody said Mayhanna and they got Mahannah. That's the way the census workers. That's the way the census workers spelled that. Mayhanna. And it's like, come on. And then I have one. Grandfather Berry. Tony Berry is my grandmother's grandfather. So Tony Berry, I'm thinking, must have had a lisp or something, because he would say Elizabeth, not Elizabeth. My grandmother also had one. She couldn't say Jessica. She would say Jessup. And so the census worker spelled it Elizabuth, Elizabeth. And then there's another one where we always do, we say Con everything. Con Lizzie, Con Mary, Con Augie.
Yeah,
we say Con. We never say cousin.
Yeah. I when I was a kid, I wonder why everybody was Con.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't say cuz, they said Con.
They say Con. That's right, not cousin, Con. And so on one of the census, you will see Con Lizzie, Conlizzy. But her name is Lizzie. Take off the Con. Apparently, they got the information from a neighbor. So it's always fascinating to me what I find when I read the census. Always. Always fascinating. But anyway, I'm not gonna hold you. I wanted to talk to you. So anything else you remember about them?
I don't mind.
So anything you want to share about them, about your growing up, your education? What did you went to school in Ohio? What was it like going to school in the city? Because you grew up there. So did you ever come back here to visit?
Oh yes, that's what I was anxious to tell you that, and I didn't know where to put it in, because Daddy worked for the railroad. As a matter of fact, all the boys that came up north, all of them came up and got jobs at the railroad. And of course, they were the dirtiest jobs, knocking fire and everything. And they could get passes for their family. So every other year, we would go to Georgia third and fourth Sunday. Crawfordsville, go to church in Crawfordsville and in Springfield. And of course, that was the time that we thought they was old folks, but they were young people, and they were so happy to get home and see their sisters and brothers and everything. And my mother, she had a sister named Priscilla, and Prince. It was so interesting. Both mother and Aunt Priscilla would have at least two outfits that were alike. And Priscilla would be shopping in Atlanta, and mother be shopping in Toledo to meet them down there, And they would always have one or two dresses that were alike, and that would always just tickle me so. And another thing about my grandma, Asada, you'd think she wasn't paying any attention because she didn't say too much. She was very quiet. And but every year she would send all the children up north a box. I think it must have been in October, or it was the latter part of the year, because it would have peanuts, pecans, black walnuts, butter, and a pound cake. Grandma always said the pound cake was for me. Well, and when mother would make me share it, girl, I would just have fits. just have to, she'd almost have to whip me because that was my pound cake, but of course Grandma knew I loved it, so she would say it was my pound cake. And what else? And beans, some kind of beans, and country, as my mother used to say, country cured ham. Oh, they'd be so happy to have that ham. And she would send that similar box to all of the children, boys, sons and daughters up north. And each one would have one. I thought that was, now you asked about traditions, that was a tradition. And the young folks, my parents and my uncles and aunts, they would look forward to that. That really sticks in my mind.
But isn't that awesome? She was sharing a part of what they had here with y'all in the north.
Absolutely. Yeah, and mother would put that old stinky ham in the greens, and I love greens and green beans. I love them. And she'd put that meat in them, and oh, she'd be so just thrilled to have that meat. and see, my grandfather, chef, living in Crawfordsville, he had a store. And so when we would go down there, go to Georgia every other year, I would go in that store and I'd smell that old stinky meat. And Mother would be just so thrilled. See, you can smell that. You can smell that country cured ham. Yeah, they got it down here. Yeah, this is where it comes from. And I'd be thinking, you can keep it down here. Kids are so on me.
But it's amazing. One of the things, I guess, one of the traditions that I try to do with my daughter is during pecan season, I will put some pecans and I will send her the pecans because I think it's important to share with them a little bit of their history, a little bit of home, it makes a difference.
Sure. And another thing I wanted to share is that I'm often sad that my 4 grandchildren have very little to do with me, especially the 2 younger ones. Because I had looked forward to a life of sharing with my grandchildren, and naturally, when I get to be a great grandmother, I thought that was something. But the grandchildren hardly even made me acquainted with the children or anything. But anyway.
Well, that's just some. That's
I was crazy about my grandmother and grandfather because my daddy was. Because he talked about his parents, and he talked about cutting Ophelia and all of them, I knew Uncle Lus, and I never saw him before, but I knew him. And I knew that my grandmother's brother, Victor, that he went to Tuskegee. They were quite proud of that. And that's where my daddy was supposed to go when they sent him away from Georgia, from Springfield. They sent him to go to school with Uncle Vic. Well, he and my mother had made a little pledge to get back together. Nobody knew that with her little fast self. And so he got to Tuskegee, and he kept going. But see, Daddy was a reader and a writer, and they were very proud of that. So he went on to Cincinnati to be with my mother's brother, Casper, who had a barber shop. But he was still longing to make more money than that, so he kept on going after a while to Toledo, where his brother Theodore was. And Theodore got him a job at the B&O Railroad. And then Daddy went back that Christmas and got Miss Mattie May and married her down there, and then brought her back up to Toledo.
Isn't that awesome?
I think so.
that show you how much he wanted to be married to her, though. So they
were young, and you know how young people are. That fever comes up in them, and and they think they're in love. That's love.
Well, to them it was love. It was so much love that he actually did not go to Tuskegee, went to Toledo, got a job at the railroad, and sent for her. I think he could qualify that as love. Because how many men would do that today?
You
That is
know,
awesome.
we had kind of a little community, well, because Aunt Hattie Bell, who married Johnny Curry, that's grandma's, one of her grandma Esada's sisters. They were living in Toledo, and there was two streets that blacks could live on, Yandota and Chesbro. We lived on Chesbro, and all the family came there. They gravitated towards Aunt Hattie Bell and Uncle Johnny, and then they had their homes nearby, you know. And I have so many little things that I think about, and I think about one of the sisters. She married a Wright. Now that's the grandmother to the boys that's out in California.
Yes, that's right.
Hattie Wright. Okay, and she had a little empire on Yandota, and the Hackneys came up north, and so we were all there like a little village, you know.
And which set of Hackneys was that? Was that couldn't have been Con Miles? He was old.
No,
Russell.
no, but I heard that name. I heard that name a lot.
Oh yeah.
John Henry, the one who bought that front land from the church,
Okay.
so that nobody could build in front of there. It was his mother or his grandmother that was there, because Susanna Hackney.
Awesome. So you have lots and lots of memory. You have to write down little memoirs. You're gonna have to write your own memoir with all those thoughts and stuff that you have in your head.
You think that's important? Now, I certainly will. I'll make the notes. Somebody will be able to put them together, but I'll certainly jot them down.
I would love to read them. That is one of the things that I think is a lost art. We don't share those things anymore. One time I was pleading with family members, go into your attic, pull out those old books, because you know when somebody died in the family, we either take that stuff and we throw it away and we burn it because we want to get ready to sell the house, or because we're not going to stay. And I go through your attic, take down those old things, go through them, pull them out. And I remember going up to Donna's house, and it was such a treasure. She had not only her father's books and papers, she also had her grandfather's, Joe Turner and Conleela Evans.
Really?
Whoa, talking about the pictures. I only went for a couple of hours, and I ended up staying for the weekend and spending the night. We pulled out so many pictures and newspaper articles and just scrapbooks. And she went down into her basement, and she came back up with this box just full of photos. And the problem was the photos didn't have names on the back of them. And because they were so old, we didn't know who they were, because when we were coming up, those people were long gone. And so, but we looked at so many pictures that night, and we ate fruit and watermelon, and we looked at more pictures. And I mean, we just was so excited. It was such a find.
It sounds fine to me. I remember when Grandma Asada passed, I had just gone to college, just moved to Colorado. I had just moved to Colorado, and she passed, so that I had to accept my furniture, and they held her services for me, because I was the first grandchild. I was their first, Grandma Asada and Uncle Ed and Grandpa Ed, I was their first grandchild, so they held the service for me. Can you imagine how that made me feel?
That's awesome.
When I got down there, Aunt Vicky told me, she says, "Come on in." She says, I got some Hackney corn liquor. They're the best down here." And so she made me this drink with the Hackney's corn liquor that they had saved for me. That made me feel very important. And Aunt Vicky was one of my favorites anyhow. And she's slow. All my daddy's brothers and sisters were slow talking, especially Uncle Jasper. But boy, once he got to talking, you could not shut him up. Just like winding him up. And Daddy always talked kind of slow, but Uncle Jasper had him beat. And Aunt Vicky, she talked slow too, and she used to tell me the funniest stories and jokes and things like that. And whenever I went to her house to see her, and see, that's something kids don't do now. I have all these lovely nieces down in Toledo, and they don't even return my calls. But they love me when they see me. They fight to sit next to me. But Aunt Vicky would always have cake. She'd have some kind of cake, chocolate cake or pound cake and liquor. And we'd sit there and chit chat and everything. And I just loved it. I just loved it. And when she got Alzheimer's, it just broke my heart. After her son took her to Dayton, I would go down to see her, and he'd take me to the home, and he'd say, "Mama, you know who this is?" She said, "Show, that's Priscilla." And then off she go. Her mind would go, and off she go. Next thing you know, she'd be at the nurse's station or someplace, and we wouldn't even see her leave the room. You know, that's how people are when they get that mind thing, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, you have such wonderful memories, Priscilla.
I do. I think I do too. I
Yeah,
think, and it's all because of Daddy and Mother, you know.
that's awesome. So you need to get your recorder and your books and sit down and write them down and put your memoirs on paper. And we some kind of way we'll help you put them together. It has been wonderful though talking to you. I surely enjoyed this hour. So I guess we're gonna have to wrap it up. But I
Yeah,
really
it was a thrill for me to meet you when I got down there for the family reunion. I was looking for you. I want to see this lady who had all these records and everything.
so how did you hear about it though?
I don't know. I think Eddie Rubin and Vicky's son must have told me about it.
Okay, so I know I was excited. We had a great time. I must admit that was probably one of the best reunions that I haven't attended all of them. They told me that
Yes.
they enjoyed the one in California, they enjoyed the one in Atlanta. So we try to have them every 2 years.
Well,
But
see, I didn't know anything about the ones in California. Nobody was telling me anything about it. And when Eddie Rubin and I found out that they were having a third family reunion, and nobody had told us, we broke in. We came uninvited. We came uninvited
well,
to
I'm glad.
the one in Cincinnati, and
Yeah, I'm
even
glad.
Frankie Glover, who was Aunt Hattie Bell's granddaughter,
Mhm.
and Adele's daughter, they didn't say anything to us, and Frankie knows us well. You
Yeah.
know, we were all raised together. So me and Eddie
Mhm.
Room, we you know how you do, you go to a party, you're not invited. Well, that's what me and Eddie Rubin did. We showed up in Cincinnati and had a ball. Had a ball.
That's awesome. But they probably assumed that you guys got an invitation. One of the problems
No,
that
they
we
didn't.
have.
I don't know. No, they didn't. But Eddie Rubin said, much cotton as I had to pick when I went to Georgia when he was a kid. And he said, they going to leave me out of it. Come on, cuz, we going
But
to
I'm,
bed, even if
and
they,
and and that's what you have to do. That's really what you have to do. Because what happens every time it's a different group that hosts the reunion, and sometimes they use their old addresses. We need a generalized area where we keep all the addresses. We make sure we update them so that we have the recent ones because every time when we have a new host, people get left out. And I remember one year, one of the Augusta members were like, "I can't believe y'all didn't send one to my mother." Okay, well, the people who were doing the hosting the reunion that year were young people, and they
uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
and a lot of people got left out because they didn't know who to go to for these addresses. The people who they had gone to did, it's like you have different families hosting and no one is communicating and making sure those addresses. So we attempted a couple of years ago to get the addresses together and try to see which was old. And we sent out letters, and so many of them came back because they were either dead, that the addresses were no longer, the addresses were no longer any good. They came back, and it was so sad because it's like, okay, now how do we find out where they are? So that's one of the things we really do have to work on, is making sure that we get the correct address so that everyone gets the invitation.
Yeah.
And this year was supposed
I could talk to you all night and probably sit up here and get my vodka, whatever you do. And we can sit up here and talk all night.
Oh, but it's wonderful. It is so wonderful. We do have to, this year was supposed to be a super year though, because this was the year that Mr. Wright, the basketball player, and his writer, Hank Gola, was supposed to come, and they were supposed to meet the family because he wanted to meet the Turner side of his family. And so I hate that coronavirus stopped it, but maybe next year, after everybody get all their shots and everything, we can.
Yeah, and we'll put on our masks and everything, so we can be together.
we can pretend to be somebody else for a day, because we probably scare him if we be ourselves.
But I love having it in Georgia because we're out in that park, you know.
Oh yeah.
And it's free. We're free. We're not encumbered by rooms and stuff like that, you know.
That's right.
We're free.
It just feels like home, Priscilla. It just feels like home. This is where it all began. This is where they brought Priscilla, the slave girl, to the Atkinson plantation, and she birthed those 8 beautiful children. This is where it all started, you know. And so it just feels like home, you know.
Yeah.
But I sure thank you. I really enjoyed this hour with you.
I gotta tell you one more thing. You know, when I used to go down to Georgia, up north, Daddy didn't want us to say yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and all that kind of stuff. He wanted us to be free, and we could say yes and no. But we had strict instructions when we went down south to say yes, sir, and no, sir, and things like that. So when being a kid, you forget. And I go in the front door of the store down in Crawfordsville, and for ice cream or something. And Louise, my cousin Louise, would be saying, "You can't do that. You can't do that." I said, "Why? This is the door, you know." And then I'd hear somebody say, "Oh, that's Chef Peake's little granddaughter from up north." Or when I was down in Springfield, I'd hear some white people saying, "Oh, that's Ed Turner's little granddaughter from up north." So I didn't get lynched, you know, for doing it.
You didn't get whipped down there. That's right.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. Yeah, because children forget.
Good night.
Thank you, darling. You have a great night.
I can go from one subject to the other talking about my family.
Oh, it's fine. You just gotta put those memories in the paper, record them, or do something with them, put them somewhere, so we can pass them on. Thank you, Priscilla. Right. I love you. Can't wait to see you again.
Oh, looking forward to it.
Thank you, darling. Okay. You have a good night now.
I got a little envelope I saved my money in for Georgia.
Well, we're glad to hear that. We are glad to hear that. All right, darling. You have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.